Like you know, Africa is very diverse continent. It's diverse both genetically and culturally, in terms of ethnics or in the linguistic. Africa is very diverse. I just remind this group that Africa has about 3,000 different ethnic groups speaking more than 2,000 different languages. So that's how much of diversity Africa is, the most diverse in the whole world. So this diversity has, as an implication. I'll talk about that. There have been many multiple genetic studies that confirm what is called the Heart of African theory. So what that means is that about 60 to 100 years ago, the modern woman migrated out of Africa and they started to populate the whole globe. And when they left Africa, so they carry with them only a proportion part of the African genetic variation with them. So meaning that there's more genetic diversity in Africa than all other population. So what I really want to emphasize is if you look on the left here in the map I'm showing on the left, you see that you see the African population here on the left, and here is showing the diversity in Africa compared with the other population. So there's larger genetic differences within Africa than between African and European population, or between African and say Asian population. So diversity in Africa, I can give an example. There's even more diversity between, like I say, Uganda population and Nigeria, or Uganda population, South Africa population, than when you compare African population as a whole to European population. And here's an example from the work from the Africa, which you may know. So this work, what you see from this work is that on the left side, you see the sample were collected all across Africa, mostly sub-Saharan Africa, and Central, East, North, and South and Western Africa. So what I want to show as an example, if you look in the middle here, where I've shown the way I showed this, the Uganda population, you see sample were collected from two different sites in Uganda. One of them is labeled as a UNS. The second one is labeled as UBS. And if you look on the right here, which is what is called the principal component analysis, so you see the sample that was called the UBS is tailored towards Central Africa, and the one called UNS is tailored towards the East Africa. This kind of example here is showing that even within one population, you can see that diversity. And I'm giving this example from the Uganda population, where you see much diversity. One of them moving towards Central Africa, and one moving towards East Africa. And an example here also from one study that we did in Uganda, where we collect sample from about 2,000 people, we see clear evidence of population structure in that small sample in a small village called Shamliboa in Uganda. You can see here having about more than 10 different ethnic groups clustering to different ethnic groups in Uganda. So even within a country, a same country like Uganda, population cluster into distinct genetic groups. Like I showed from the last two slides, you see Uganda population, they can separate into the Bantu speaking group, can separate into the Nilo-Sahara speaking group, and it also, you have also seen an example of at least 10 distinct ethnic cluster from genetics. So this has implication. So what this means is that results from one African subgroup may not apply to another. So treating African as a single genetic category overlook critical population specific variation and risk mixing important disease association. That is something to take note of, and very, very important to remember. So the genetic diversity has many implications. So one of them is that it can help us to understand the modern human evolution and the effect that it may have also on human disease. And also genetic study in non-African population, including their clinical relevance, may not be generalizable to to African population. If you do studies in, say, European population or Asian population, that may not be generalizable to African population. Another implication is that many genetic variants, are yet to be discovered if you just study just European population or the population. And the last one is that findings implies from genetic study in one subpopulation within Africa may not be applicable to another subpopulation within Africa. For example, genetic study from Nigeria may not be applicable to Uganda, and Uganda may not be applicable to South Africa because they are very distinct. They have very distinct genetic architecture.